Guys, my name is Ankush Gaurav and I welcome you to Contour series. This tutorial is in continuation with the earlier one where we learned all about form validation fundamentals with the help of size annotation in detail. Now let's talk about a few more important validation annotations like pattern, min, max, past, future, etc., which are supported by Spring MVC framework in detail in this demo. So let's start. Guys, let's say in this demo you have a very special and a unique requirement. What you want is whatever value user would provide here in the student name field, that value should not contain any digit in it. And if user violates this constraint, by providing here some value in the student name field which would contain a digit in it, something like this, and submit the form, then in that case my application should return back the same admission form along with the complete description of the error message to the user as a response. So question is how you would do it. Guys, Spring MVC says, hey developers, you can easily achieve such a requirement in your application by including something called as pattern annotation on top of student name field, like this. So with this annotation on top of student name field, I'm simply instructing Spring MVC framework, hey Spring MVC framework, whenever you are performing data binding task for student name field, and if the value which you are binding with this field is containing any digit in it, then in that case you simply consider it as a data binding related error and put that error into this binding result reference. Guys, I'll do one thing. I'll quickly show you this thing working on the browser, and subsequently I would explain more on the changes which I've just made in this class. So now after this change in the student class, if I provide here a value in the student name field which is containing a digit in it and submit the form, let's see what happens. Cool, the application returned back the same admission form with this error message. It's saying must match this pattern which we gave over here. So the idea is very clear. Whatever pattern we would provide here in the pattern annotations argument, that pattern Spring MVC would use to perform the validation task for student name property. Guys, in your Spring MVC application, you may use this or some other pattern, some suitable pattern based on your project requirements. Alright, let's proceed further. Guys, let's say in this demo you have another special requirement. What you want is whatever value user would provide here in the date of birth field, that value should not fall in future. And if the user violates this constraint by providing here some value in the student date of birth field, some value which would fall in future. So today is 24th of October, and if user is providing here some value, say 25th of October 2014, and submit the form, in that case my application should return back the same admission form along with the complete description of the error message. So question is how we would do it. Spring MVC says, hey developers, you can easily do it with the help of an annotation called as past. You simply put past annotation on top of student date of birth and you are done. With this annotation on top of student date of birth property, I'm simply instructing Spring MVC framework, hey Spring MVC framework, whenever you are performing data binding task for student date of birth property, and if the value which you are binding with it is falling in future, that time you simply treat it as a binding error. Let me show you this working on the browser. So after providing here some value in the student date of birth, which is falling in future when I would submit the form. Let's see what happens. Cool. The application returned back the same admission form with this error message. It's saying must be in the past. So the idea is very clear. The user is going to provide here some value in the student date of birth field which would fall in future and submit the form. The application is going to consider that as a binding error, and that's all because of this past annotation which we have placed on top of student date of birth field. And if you would provide here some value which would not fall in future, set this value and submit the form, the application would not treat that as a binding error. Alright, now let's proceed further. Guys, in this demo application, there is no restriction on the number value which user would provide here in the student mobile field. If you provide 12 and submit the form, there won't be any problem. If you provide say 123 and submit the form, there won't be any problem. Now what if my requirement here is something like this? Whatever value user would provide here in the student mobile field, that value should always be less than or equal to 2222 value. And if the user is going to violate this constraint by providing here some value, a value say 2224, which is more than 2222, and submit the form, that time my application should return back the same admission form with the complete description of the error message for it. So question is how we would do it, and the answer is with the help of max annotation. You simply put max annotation with this value on top of student mobile field and you are done. With this annotation on top of student mobile field, I'm simply instructing Spring MVC framework, hey Spring MVC framework, whenever you are performing data binding task for student mobile field, and if the value which you're binding with it is more than this value, then you treat that as a binding error. Guys, let me show you this thing working on the browser after this change. So now if I provide here a value 2224, which is more than this value, then let's see what happens after I submit the form. Cool, the application returned back the same admission form with this error message. It's saying must be less than or equal to this value which we provided here. Guys, in this demo I showed you some of the most important form validation annotations which are supported by Spring MVC framework. In the next tutorial, we're going to learn how to write your own custom validation annotation in your Spring MVC application. Guys, a big thank you for liking all of my tutorials on Spring MVC series. If you have any question or feedback, please provide them below the video or simply write to me on this email ID for all of your queries. Please hit the like button if you really like the video, and do not forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel Contour series, and I'm gonna catch you in my next tutorial.